Hello there. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Bathurst streetcar. This is a streetcar that is probably one of the more recognized ones in the city because it's the one that most people use to get to the exhibition, but it still has its own interesting history. So, let's get into the video. The origins of the Bathurst streetcar can be traced back to June 27, 1885. On that day, the Toronto Street Railway would begin service on the Seton Village streetcar. This line would use horse-drawn cars operating from Bloor Street, south on Bathurst to College, and then east to Spadina, south to King Street, and then east and south to the intersection of Front Street and Frederick Street. In the late 1880s, the tracks along Bathurst Street would be extended south to King Street. This would allow for the creation of the Bathurst streetcar in 1889. This route would operate from the intersection of Front and Frederick, north to King Street and then west to Bathurst Street. The route would then run north to the CP rail tracks at Dupont Street. 1889 would also see the start of the Davenport streetcar, which paralleled the Seton Village streetcar but operated north to the CP rail tracks with the Bathurst streetcar. This Davenport streetcar shouldn't be confused with the more well-known Davenport car, which I have done a video on though. Service north of Bloor Street, however, was limited as there was only a single track for both the Bathurst and Davenport streetcars to use. This problem wouldn't last very long though, as in 1891 service on both the Seton Village and Davenport streetcars would be ended, leaving the Bathurst streetcar as the sole service on Bathurst Street. Soon after, the line north of Bloor Street would be double-tracked. On September 5, 1892, the Bathurst streetcar would be extended south to Front Street and east to Frederick Street. The route would be electrified 2 years later on April 19, 1894. On October 11, 1906, the Bathurst streetcar would be extended west along Dupont Street to a Y at Christie Street. Due to the large railway land south of Front Street acting as a barrier to a further southern extension of the route, the Bathurst streetcar would remain static like this until 1916. On August 25, 1916, a bridge crossing the railway tracks would open, although it would cross the tracks at a southwesterly angle. This bridge wasn't even a new construction and was actually moved from the Humber River to Bathurst Street. Tracks would be laid across the bridge and across the north edge of Fort York on a private right-of-way to the exhibition grounds. The original plans actually called for the tracks to be built through the center of Fort York, however this idea was quickly vetoed by the military. Lastly, a spur track would be constructed just east of Strawn Avenue to a dumping area where the TTC would dump ashes from its power plants. These new tracks to the exhibition would only see regular service during the summer when the Canadian National Exhibition was happening. An underpass crossing the CP rail tracks north of Dupont Street would open in 1914. However, streetcars would not operate north of Dupont until 1921. This was a source of contention with the City of Toronto, who wished for streetcar service to be extended north to serve the communities on the north side of the tracks. The city would contemplate establishing a line under the Toronto Civic Railway banner, which would operate from St. Clair Avenue and east along Davenport Road to Dupont Street. This wouldn't occur though, and instead the city would wait for the TRC's operating charter to expire. In December of 1921, after the establishment of the Toronto Transportation Commission, the Bathurst streetcar would finally be extended north from Dupont Street to St. Clair Avenue, looping via St. Clair and Vaughan Road. In 1931, the bridge crossing the railway tracks south of Front Street would be realigned and extended at a north-south angle. The former right-of-way through Fort York would be abandoned in favor of laying new tracks along Fleet Street. On June 22nd, service would begin on the Fleet streetcar, although it would quickly be renamed to the Fort streetcar. This route would operate from the newly built Fleet Loop along Fleet Street and up Bathurst Street to Wolseley Loop just north of Queen Street. By the mid-1930s, service on the Bathurst streetcar had been altered, with the route now operating along Adelaide Street to Church Street, looping via Richmond and Victoria Streets. Rush hour service would continue to run along Front Street to Frederick Street. The Bathurst streetcar would be joined by the Bathurst Tripper, which operated from Keele Street east along St. Clair and south on Bathurst Street and east on Front Street to Sherbourne Street. During World War II, service on the Fort streetcar would be extended to the exhibition. On April 23, 1942, Vaughan Loop would open between Bathurst Street and Vaughan Road as a means to reduce congestion at the Bathurst and St. Clair intersection. With the opening of the Yonge subway in 1954, service on the Bathurst Tripper would be ended. Bathurst streetcars would continue to operate along Adelaide Street, but only until 6:30 p.m. After that, all Bathurst cars would operate to Exhibition Loop. Lastly, Fort cars would continue to operate to Wolseley Loop, but sometimes operate beyond to Vaughan Loop. On May 15, 1958, the city would opt to make a portion of Richmond and Adelaide streets one-way. Because of this, the looping of the Bathurst streetcar would change, with the route now running east on Adelaide, north on Church, west on Richmond, south on York, and then west on Adelaide back to Bathurst Street. This route would change again on June 13, 1960, when the one-way restrictions on Richmond and Adelaide streets were extended to Simcoe Street. This would make the current loop impossible. Instead, the TTC would begin looping the Bathurst streetcar east on Adelaide, south on Church, and west on King Street back to Bathurst. This setup wasn't ideal though, as the King streetcar at the time was operating at 1-minute intervals, while the Kingston Road Tripper was operating every 90 seconds. Adding the Bathurst streetcar would only lead to further streetcar congestion along King Street. This would be a short-lived issue though, as the opening of the Bloor Danforth subway in 1966 would bring with it major changes to streetcar operations on Bathurst Street. That year, the Fort streetcar would be abolished, ending 35 years of service. The Bathurst streetcar would also see its route cut back from Vaughan Loop to the newly built Bathurst Station. As well, service through the downtown core along Adelaide would be ended, and now all Bathurst cars would operate to Exhibition Loop. The tracks along Adelaide between Bathurst Street and Spadina Avenue would be soon after paved over. The tracks north of Bloor Street would remain though, as they were by this point the only connection to the St. Clair streetcar and the Hillcrest shops. The Bathurst streetcar at this point was also the only major north-south streetcar line in the network, as all the other north-south routes, Lansdowne, Dovercourt, Yonge, Church, Sherbourne, Parliament, and Coxwell were gone, and the Spadina streetcar wouldn't return for another 31 years. On April 2, 1973, the Bathurst streetcar would be joined by the Downtowner streetcar, which operated from Bingham Loop along Kingston Road and Queen Street to Bathurst Street, then traveling to Bathurst Station. This service along Bathurst Street would become rush hour only on September 4, 1974, and would be ended for good on March 9, 1984, when all Downtowner cars were cut back to McCall Loop. With the opening of the Spadina extension of Line 1 in 1978, the TTC would consider extending the Bathurst streetcar north of Bloor Street again. They would look at either running Bathurst cars to St. Clair West Station or all the way to St. Clair Station and cutting the St. Clair and Earls Court cars back to St. Clair West. This wouldn't happen though, as the TTC was concerned about the possible congestion this may cause at the Bathurst and St. Clair intersection. As well, there was the issue of duplicating the service provided by the 7 Bathurst bus between Bathurst Station and St. Clair Avenue. With the introduction of the CLRV cars, the Bathurst streetcar would be given the number 511. The last major change would come in 1995, when the 511 Bathurst was temporarily cut back to Fleet Loop, while the old Exhibition Loop was demolished. The 511 Bathurst would begin serving the new Exhibition Loop when it opened in 1996. The future of the 511 Bathurst is hard to gauge, as it doesn't seem like much about the route will be changing in the near future. The route will have a connection to the future Ontario line at the planned station for the King and Bathurst intersection. Beyond that though, it is hard to tell what will happen, as there are no concrete plans or even real proposals on the table. It is possible that the 511 Bathurst may be extended west to Dufferin Loop as part of the Waterfront West LRT project. The idea of extending the Bathurst streetcar north of Bloor Street to St. Clair is also one that is still floated, but never really outside of transit nerd circles. The TTC themselves have made no indication that they have any plans of bringing the Bathurst streetcar back to St. Clair Avenue. Either way, the 511 Bathurst has carved out its position in the city's streetcar network and continues to serve the residents who live south of Bloor Street, as well as the many people who use it in the summer to access the exhibition. And with that, I will end this video here. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button because there are more videos like it on the channel, and there are more videos like it on the way. If there's anything you want to say about the Bathurst streetcar, don't be afraid to do so in the comments section down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.